Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's puppet Ramzan Kadyrov has started a conflict with the Kremlin over negotiations with other countries over the security of his assets and family, important stories reported. As the publication has found out, Kadirov has begun negotiations with the authorities of the Middle East countries regarding the future of his assets and the safety of his family members, without the Kremlin's consent. The publication reported this with reference to a former and current FSB officer who specializes in the North Caucasus. This information was partially confirmed by a North Caucasus journalist and human rights activist. According to the publication, against the backdrop of his deteriorating health, Ramzan Kadyrov tried to negotiate with the leaders of Muslim countries in secret from the Kremlin. But Russian intelligence services found out about this and reported it to Vladimir Putin. At the same time as relations with Moscow worsened on Friday, Ramzan Kadyrov's daughter Aishat left her post as Deputy Prime Minister of Chechnya. The split also affected Kadyrov's ally, State Duma Deputy Adam Yelimkhanov. He was really made to understand the limits of his capabilities, said Chechen movement representative Niso Ansar Dishny. The publication also found out that Kadyrov has been seriously ill for a long time. As Novaya Gazeta Europe journalists reported in their investigation, he has serious problems with his kidneys and pancreas. Journalists believe that his illness is progressing. Although Kadyrov is trying to hide his worsening condition with increased media activity, in recent months he has increasingly disappeared from the public eye for long periods of time. He understands well how power is structured in his region and what can await his family members if he leaves. He also knows the value of promises and security guarantees from the federal center. Uncertainty about the future of his relatives forced him to seek guarantees for them in Middle Eastern Muslim countries with whose leaders Kadyrov has long-standing friendly relations, the publication says. The reason for such steps could be the deterioration of Kadyrov's health. As reported by Novaya Gazeta Europe, he has serious problems with his kidneys and pancreas. It has become more difficult for him to speak in public, which may indicate the progression of the disease. Kadyrov has appeared in public less frequently in recent months. In January and February, he was out of the spotlight for a long time, later explaining that he was on vacation. "There is no illness that has not been attributed to me," he said after his return. On January the 30th, it was reported that Kadyrov's cousin Shakrudi Edilgiriev purchased several luxury properties in Dubai for the head of Chechnya.
The Ukrainian armed forces militants hit the Sudza gas measuring station with a package of HIMARS rockets. As a result, the power facility caught fire and ceased to exist. Over the past 24 hours, the Kiev regime has continued attacks on Russian energy infrastructure using various types of UAVs, as well as the HIMARS multiple launch rocket system. On March 28, at about 10:20, the Kiev regime launched an attack using, according to preliminary information, HIMARS multiple launch rockets at the Sudza gas metering station, which resulted in a major fire and the energy facility was virtually destroyed. The Russian Defense Ministry commented on the latest terrorist act by the Kiev regime. The military department noted that on the morning of March 28, Russian air defense systems in the Saratov region shot down and intercepted 19 Ukrainian aircraft-type attack UAVs, the target of which was the infrastructure of the Saratov oil refinery. Thus, all publicly stated commitments of the Kiev regime to allegedly stop deliberate attacks on Russian civilian energy infrastructure are yet another ploy by Zelensky to prevent the collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces front and restore its military potential with the help of European allies, the Russian Defense Ministry emphasized. A Ukrainian official said it was Russia that attacked the gas transit point in Sudza. Reuters could not independently confirm which side was responsible. But each side has accused the other of breaking the energy truce, underscoring the fragility of the US-brokered agreements. Sudza, in Russia's western region of Kursk, is the site of a gas metering station at the transit point where Russia pumped gas by pipeline across Ukraine and into Europe until the end of last year. Flows stopped on January 1 after Ukraine declined to renew the deal because of the war. Pipeline infrastructure for possible Russian gas exports via Ukraine to Europe still remains in place, including at other locations, but the Sudza facility would need to be rebuilt in order for gas to be pumped again there at any point in the future.
Ukraine's campaign of long-range strikes against Russian military factories and ammunition depots has produced mixed results, according to Forbes analyst David Axe. Sure, such strikes brought some relief to civilians suffering under the bombings, but in a broader sense, air-launched cruise missiles often had no impact on the fighting, explains Michael Kaufman, a fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Raids like the one on a drone factory in the Oriol region may have saved a few Ukrainians, but such strikes on high explosive targets have not changed the fundamental problem facing Ukrainian forces: the ability to penetrate enemy defenses, Axe said. As Kaufman points out, while long-range strikes can have an impact on enemy forces, Ukrainian brigades often fail to take advantage of them. It is not particularly useful for the Ukrainian Air Force to blow up, say, the entire stock of heavy mortars of a Russian field army if a neighboring Ukrainian army corps is trapped by minefields or lacks sufficient manpower to launch an offensive and take advantage of the Russians' dwindling short-term ammunition stocks. Axe writes. He notes that, in fact, much of Ukraine's long-range strike campaign, raids targeting military supplies, has been impressive but far from decisive. According to the Ukrainian think tank Frontelligence Insight, more than half of Ukraine's strikes between September and February had limited impact. Drones and missiles may have hit a few Russian factories and warehouses and started a few scary fires, but firefighters eventually put out the flames and workers eventually rebuilt the buildings. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces continue to slowly lose ground in eastern Ukraine. Of course, more frequent attacks and heavier munitions could cause long-term damage, but Ukraine does not have enough of the best foreign-made deep strike munitions to wage a sustained intensive campaign against Russian logistics, and it does not yet produce enough of these munitions on its own, Axe points out. That may be why Ukrainian strike planners have shifted their targeting in recent months, increasingly targeting Russian oil infrastructure, especially the refineries that support Russia's war economy. Because these are more technically complex and expensive structures, their importance for the Russian oil refining industry and oil product exports is also greater, and their restoration is more difficult and expensive. Frontelligence Insight explains. At the same time, as economist Vladimir Milov notes, in order to enhance the effect of the strikes, Ukrainian troops must conduct regular attacks on large, unique cracking units at modern Russian oil refineries. It is extremely difficult for Russian industry to replace them under the current sanctions regime, and frequent and precise strikes could prevent their repair, Milov noted.